You are tuned to the Witching Hours, and I'm your host, Kanaska Carter. Tonight we are going to be talking about reincarnation. On a previous episode, we were speaking about 3 different reincarnation cases in particular, and tonight we're going to go over the famous case of Jenny Cockell. And she remembered having a life in Ireland well over 80 years ago. And she remembered living in a village in Ireland, and one of her most distinct memories that she remembered was waiting for a boat that was at the edge of the water and just staring off into the water, waiting for somebody or something to happen. So it is believed that Jenny Cockell is the reincarnation of Mary Sutton, who lived in Malahide, and Mary was the mother of 8 children in Ireland. So just before the 1900s to the 1930s, she remembered her past life very young. So Mary Sutton was the mother of 8 children in Ireland just before the turn of the century of the 1900s until the 1930s is when she remembers living there. So she remembered her past life at a very young age, and she started to tell her mother about her memories, and she even drew a little map of where she lived. She would draw this map of where she lived in a past life. So around the age of 16, she started to allow herself to think about her past life. And this was around the time that she also discovered Irish music. So as a child, like I said, she drew maps of where she used to live. And she asked a bookseller, a local bookseller, if they could get her a map of Ireland. So she asked the bookseller if they could get her a map of Ireland so she could compare the maps that she drew of her past life and compare it to Ireland and see if they lined up in some way. So they put it against a map of Malahide. The map that she had drawn, she put it next to a map of Malahide. And the road was where it was supposed to be. The road to Dublin was what she called the road to the city. And the road where she'd lived as Mary was also there. So she was correct when it came to what it looked like. She was remembering it correctly. I found that quite interesting, actually, that she was able to draw from memory what her past life looked like. So everything was exactly where she had said it was. So the owner of the bookshop was very surprised at the accuracy of her drawings compared to the map of Ireland, considering she drew this when she was very young. So this confirmed that her memories were real. She decided to act on it and return to Ireland, is how she described it. She didn't say that she visited there, it just felt like she was returning. Basically, she felt like she was returning to her hometown because her heart always felt like that was her home. So she visited Malahide and recognized things right away. She felt like it was going back to her hometown. She found her cottage and confirmed that the family that she had remembered were in fact real people. The family was real. So she confirmed that her past life family that she had been remembering with 8 children was real. So she found her cottage. She was able to trace her family from her past life. She traced down exactly who they were, and they were obviously much older now in her new life as Jenny. So her life, unfortunately, in a past life, had ended tragically at the age of 37, leaving behind 5 young children who had to fend for themselves. When I heard that detail, it kind of like hit me in the heart, because I'm going to be 37 next year. I have 5 cats, and I cannot even imagine. So that's just truly heartbreaking that she was so young and left behind all of her children that had to literally fend for themselves at such a young age. How much living that she had left to do. But it was taken from her so young. So she was left with this feeling like she failed at her responsibility as a mother. And the failure and the guilt carried over into her new life, into her reincarnated life. So Mary Sutton's children were unfortunately separated after her tragic death. They were all separated. She met them all in their 60s and their 70s. So she was reincarnated, I guess, decades after her death. And it took months for them to finally accept that, okay, this is my mother. They would question her about certain things and see if she would get the details correct. They asked where their rooms were in the cottage that they had lived in her past life. And they asked where the windows were, just to see if she could accurately describe the way that the cottage had looked. And she happily told them and described it to them perfectly. So they accepted that she remembered the cottage. And the oldest son, named Sonny, he said, "This woman only knows things that I know, and my mother knows." And he said it didn't make any sense, So he became convinced that this was, in fact, the reincarnation of his mother, Mary Sutton. Can you imagine that happening to you? You have somebody pass away, and then the reincarnated version of them visits you. So one or two of the things, even his siblings did not know. His brothers and sisters did not remember. I'm assuming because they were so young, they didn't remember certain things. Like poaching, for example, that was happening for particular animals in specific spots. Nobody outside of the family could have possibly known that. But she was able to describe where the poaching was happening and the particular animals that they were poaching. So Sonny said that this was the most interesting thing because of her most prominent memory that she had of looking out over the water, waiting for something or waiting for somebody. Sonny said that he would go caddying for the golfers, and I guess this was like a small job that he had picked up, and he went on a little island that was close by to do this work, to make some extra money, across the inlet. And at dusk, he would come back on a ferry boat back to the jetty. And when he would come back, he would hand over some of his earnings. And his mother was always there to meet him and walk back with him. So the memory that she had of waiting near the water, looking out over the water, this was the memory of waiting for him to come back from his caddying job, helping out the golfers in Ireland. So it's a very tragic story, but it's kind of a beautiful ending to it. That she ended up being reincarnated and coming back to see her children one last time. Almost makes me emotional. I am a little bit emotional because I do have 5 cats. And I'm almost 37, so it's kind of tugging at my heartstrings a little bit, but I truly do believe in reincarnation. I remember one of my own past lives and was able to predict certain events that happen in my own life. I don't really talk about it too much, but it is a comforting thought to know that we do not go anywhere. Our spirit returns, and I really do believe that we are reincarnated. So that is the story of Jenny Cockell, who was reincarnated from Mary Sutton, who lived in Ireland in the 1900s, early 1900s and late 1800s. So that is all for this episode of The Witching Hours. I will see you guys next Wednesday night. Sometimes I post early Thursday morning, but I do try to get the episode out every single Wednesday night. So I will see you guys next week, and I hope you have the best week ever. Halloween is coming up, so if you feel like dressing up, just do it. Life is short. Go have some fun. I love you guys, and I'll see you next week for another episode of The Witching Hours. I love you guys. And I almost forgot to tell you that you're awesome. I'm your host, Ken Ascacata. Okay, bye.